Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Personalization Outbreak Podcast. In today's episode, we will delve into the realm of higher education and its role in shaping tomorrow's workforce with our guest, Irma Becerra. Irma is the president of Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia. Now, together, we'll discuss President Becerra's inspiring journey and her innovative approach to revolutionize education at Marymount University. Now, throughout our conversation, we'll uncover the valuable lessons President Becerra learned from the pandemic and how they have propelled Marymount University to embrace change and adapt quickly. President Becerra will share how they have broken down silos and fostered interdisciplinary collaboration, preparing students for the demands of the modern workforce with the necessary skills and knowledge to excel in their careers and make a meaningful impact in today's dynamic world. Now, before we get started, please click the like button below, share it with your colleagues, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media at Glenn Yopes. Let's get started. You are listening to Personalization Outbreak, a podcast about the collapse of traditional corporate standards in today's more personalized world. I'm Glenn Yopes. I'm a leadership strategist, author, contributor to Forbes, and founder of the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. On this show, I'm interviewing executives across multiple sectors to find out how the balance between standardization and personalization can exist. President Becerra, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm delighted to be with you and with our listeners today. Thank you.
No, you're very, very welcome. I mean, we all know that higher education has been through a lot since the pandemic, and it continues to evolve. It continues to, I believe, almost working really hard to anticipate what may be coming next to try to get out of the circumstances before they force their hand. And I know that this matters to you, and especially today in a world where higher education and the value of a college degree is being questioned and challenged. Why do you think a college degree is so important?
Yes, thank you, Glenn. I have to share with you that I'm very alarmed about this. I'm going to say recent narrative that college is just not for everyone. And what we are seeing at the university level is that as this rhetoric has spread out, we've seen a precipitous decline in students entering 2- and 4-year colleges. And we need to stop this rhetoric in the interest of our nation's maintaining its global competitiveness and its global leadership. College degrees have always been the most important determinant in social mobility. And more recently, during the pandemic, we all realized that people that had college degrees are the ones that were afforded the privilege of being able to work from home. So even if we're thinking about how as a society we're going to be more resilient to future pandemics, a college degree is a necessity, it's not a luxury. So we need to stand up to this rhetoric that college is for some people and not for others. And what I always say, if college is not for everybody, then who is it not for? We would be leaving a part of our society outside the American dream, if I may. And especially as we see the entrance of artificial intelligence, data science, jobs are getting more and more complex, and many of the least complex jobs are being replaced by AI. So we can't afford as a nation to succumb this narrative. We need to fight it. We need to make sure that students continue to enroll on a college degree, and then as a university president, do everything that is within our reach to ensure that students get to graduation. There is so much that students learn when they are on campus, and actually navigating through a college campus is such a great experience for the future development of a person. I've always also thought that, There is no more leveling than a college residence hall, right? Everybody is the same in a college residence hall. So let's make sure that we fight that rhetoric, and we make sure that our youth knows that the dream of a college degree is well within the reach.
You know what, President Becerra, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's interesting. Just yesterday, we use a lot of research. We do a lot of research in my organization, and we started using this AI tool to help us navigate some of the research. And it's really incredible how these tools work. But it made me realize, when I went through my 4 years, actually, I went through 5 years at UCLA. The biggest learning I had was we have to learn how to do the things that we don't like doing in life. And this is something about getting a college degree, because it beyond the curriculum and the things that we learn, it builds character, helps you understand discipline, the attention to detail, helps you really understand how to navigate the things that we don't prepare for in life. And so at a time of so much change, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, if we're going to try to replace higher education with tools that scour the internet, it's actually creating the opposite effect. It's not making us wise enough and not smart enough. So given what you know about students and where they are, I mean, how are you aiming to provide a more personalized education for them?
Excellent question, Glenn. And I think I agree with you. There's so much that students learn when they're on the campus. They learn to be critical thinkers. For example, nowadays, a lot of students are getting their news from social media. I've had this conversation with my own kids because they see things in social media and they say, Mom, you think this is true? Because if you just read it and you're not a critical thinker, you don't stop to say, well, maybe this is not true. Maybe this is an artificial intelligence generated image. So I think that the ability to seek for the truth, to learn how to enjoy a conversation with someone that has a different view, to be able to listen attentively and try to understand their perspective so that you can put yourselves in their shoes. Here at Marymount, for example, we have a very globally diverse student body, and students get to learn, well, how are things in Saudi Arabia? How are things in Ireland? Not only how are things here in the United States, and then all over the United States, every state, things are also different. We are very focused on personalized education here at Marymount, Glenn, because we know that not every student learns the same way. And we learned this through the pandemic when we were forced to pivot from regular face-to-face education to remote education. And of course, we had to do that in order to keep everybody safe. And we were able to do that within a matter of days. And it was important, at that moment to keep everybody learning, to keep everybody moving ahead towards graduation. But when I surveyed students around May of 2020, many of them said, and not only the undergrads, but many graduate students said also, I'm not learning as well in this mode of delivery. I miss being embedded in the classroom. I miss learning from my colleagues as much as the professor. I'm very distracted when I'm learning from home. The internet is a big distraction. I feel that my grades are not as good as they were before when I was at the university, face to face. So with that, we said, well, we need to come back to face-to-face education because our students are telling us that this remote education is not working well for them. So with that idea, we actually came back to a hybrid in fall of 2020. So students were physically here. They would come. If we moved to socially distance education in their classroom, in some instances, it was a mix or hybrid of some remote and some face-to-face, but we were constantly gauging from them what works for you. And I think it was an important moment because for years I've heard that all higher ed is moving to online. And we were able to discover how important is the opportunity for students to be in the classroom, to learn from each other, to be face-to-face with the professors. When the professor is able to gauge from the student, hey, Jimmy, I see from your face that you're having trouble with the material. All these things that are missing from just a remote education that is become, in many cases, so many students to one versus our small and personalized attention that students get in our classrooms here, the difference was evident. So students were happy to come back in fall of 2020, and we continued on a face-to-face until today, which was very successful. So in addition to experimenting with different modes of education in terms of hybrid, remote, and face-to-face, we are also experimenting with giving students the opportunity, in particular at the graduate level, to build their own master's degree by stacking these graduate certificates that are completely flexible. So not only flexibility in terms of mode of delivery, but also flexibility in content. So students can pick to put together a module on data science, on cloud computing, and on entrepreneurship, and then form their own masters in emerging technologies. So we are experimenting with this type of modular, flexible graduate education, also in health, in criminal justice, so that students can personalize their components, their modules into their master's degree that will help them best either get the job that they want to move into. Maybe they're doing shifting areas of expertise, or maybe upskill into a new job that perhaps did not exist some years ago, like cybersecurity.
President Becerra, as I think about what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense. But as you know, higher education was historically known as an institution to help someone get a job. What do you think? First of all, do you still think that's true? Or have you seen it expand to offer other benefits beyond just getting a job? Because as you know, now we have a lot of working adults. And so I'm sure that they may be either coming back to get their masters, or they may want, continuing this education. I mean, how do you see what the real ROI is in higher education now than maybe what it wasn't before?
Yeah, I agree with you, Glenn. I think we used to think of higher ed as something that you do 18 to 22, and maybe a small group of people will continue to their masters. Most people go and start their careers, and then that's it. But as we were discussing earlier, many of the job opportunities of today, there are in fields that just did not exist 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So if you are, say, maybe you're working in an enterprise and you want to do career shifting and you want to become a cybersecurity expert because you see the great opportunities that are there, or your company is putting a much more focus on analytics, and this is something that you way back when you took a course in statistics, but you never thought that you'd be working in this field of analytics, which is becoming so increasingly important. So people find themselves in a situation where they need to upskill, where they need to or reskill themselves, or maybe something has happened and there's a shift in their field. So I think it's important that people view higher ed in a continuum. It's a continuous learning, and this opportunity where your graduate school can be put together as to what your aspirations are, career aspirations are. It gives the learner, the adult learner, more flexibility to really focus on those areas that they want to acquire a new skill set.
Well, and I think that's the bottom line, right? How do we continuously reinvent ourselves? And what role does higher education provide as a platform for not just continuous upskilling and relearning, but also helping people learn about themselves? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think that also over your lifetime, you're going to have maybe interests that change dramatically. And let me give you an example of my own. When I went to engineering school, and I have 3 degrees in electrical engineering, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. I didn't, first of all, I was not involved in any kind of public speaking. So I've had to upskill myself to be able to be on this podcast with you today, Glenn. But also later in my life, I became very interested in entrepreneurship. And I did not have entrepreneurship formal education when I was a student, all the way to the PhD. So it may be that you have new interests, something, a new field piques your interest. And I think that we have to always look at the possibility. Maybe you want to completely change what you're doing. Maybe you went to school to become an accountant and now you want to be in HR. Or maybe you went to school to become a nurse and now you want to be an administrator as a hospital. Maybe you want to be the president of a hospital and then you need to pick up new skills that you necessarily were not exposed to when you were going to school before. So I think higher ed is always there, is always available for the lifelong learner to turn to as your interests in terms of what you're doing may shift. Glenn, did you ever start out thinking that you were going to have your own podcast one day? I'm sure that this is also a new interest for you, correct?
Of course. And but you just, by the way, thank you for letting me go here with these questions because this is the new narrative of higher education. Its ecosystem has expanded. It's not just about a job, for those that should want to desire to be a lifelong learner. I mean, did you and I ever think that the world would become so polarized? Of course not. The world is changing so fast, and we need higher education to lean on. But in leaning on it, we also need to make sure that it also evolves with the times. So, what are some of the big takeaways or key learnings that you grasp out of the pandemic? I mean, this was so disruptive, but let's be honest with each other. It did us a favor. It revealed things that we probably knew and didn't want to take the time to solve for. And it also accelerated us to expand and stretch ourselves to maybe places that we've always should have been. So what have been your key learnings?
A wonderful question, Glenn. I think the pandemic really impacted every industry, but I think higher ed in almost every way. And as I think about the pandemic, we're still dealing with the effects of the pandemic even today. We're dealing with the pandemic in how it impacted our students, in how it impacted our own employees. There is an incredible competition for talent, and of course, higher ed is not exempt from that. But I think it also made us think about our structure, our architecture. Are we designed in a way that really allows us to be nimble, to really able to pivot quickly? And typically, in our case, universities are pretty much structured in a similar way, and that is you have departments, and then departments are part of a school, and then you have all these schools that are part of the university. And it's very well known that typically these schools tend to be very siloed. So like people in the School of Business then do not talk to the School of Engineering. So it's just, we have nice kind of walls between these schools. Well, so during the pandemic, we really took a hard look at ourselves, at our architecture. What is the academic infrastructure that supports what we do? And we realized that for a university our size, we have about 4,000 students. We had a lot of walls around small departments. We had 26 small departments, and we had 4 schools, all siloed, like typical, like what you see at every university. I like to say that, like, I call universities in general are collections of schools because there's so well-defined walls around the schools. So we looked at our architecture and we said, well, would it make sense for a university of our size that we deviate from this model of the traditional university? And we thought about, let's take the opportunity to think about interdisciplinarity. So the provost and a group of faculty essentially redesigned our academic infrastructure into 3 colleges and 10 interdisciplinary schools. And when we did that, we found that first, we reduced a lot of unnecessary infrastructure costs, but also we were enabling more interaction among the faculty that are no longer now in nicely defined walled departments. So, and we're very excited about this new architecture, which actually did not happen by chance. We heard from academic leaders during that time that they wanted to see students, graduates that had more interdisciplinary skills. For example, they want to see engineers that are good communicators. And I mentioned to you earlier how, as an engineering student, I never took a course on communication. I actually never even learned how to do a PowerPoint. But nowadays, it's very important that engineers not only work in their cubicle, but they're able to interact with other engineers in different groups and communicate their ideas effectively. So, based on what we were listening to industry telling us, we need clinicians that understand some basics of business. We actually effected this change, and we're very excited to be a leader in promoting an architecture that is more interdisciplinary because we know it will produce a graduate that is more in line with what industry is looking for now.
I love it. And I have a comment. So, number one, these are the dangers of standardization. We promote siloed thinking. Things are just moving too fast. I mean, I think that we've all learned the hard way that siloed thinking maybe takes us 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And again, I say that respectfully because there's still a lot of organizations and institutions that are architected and designed that way. But this whole notion of changing the construct of how the institution operates and promoting these interdisciplinary opportunities is so critically important. And I can share this with you firsthand in working with some of the top Fortune 500 companies in the world. People keep thinking that we're making a lot of progress with our businesses. And it's not that we're not, we are. But we're learning that without the interdisciplinary, we can't even get to baseline. In other words, in many instances, we're at -70 trying to get to -20. And interdisciplinary is so critical because, again, we are more interconnected than ever before. And unless we begin to accept that fact that is a non-negotiable fact, we can't grow and evolve at the speeds that we need to. So I really applaud the work and leadership you're doing because this is so important. And remember, I'll speak for my generation. We weren't taught to think that way. But guess what? My dad taught me how to think that way because as someone that comes from an immigrant family, that's how you navigated survival, renewal, and reinvention. And so here you have this global student body, international student body. I actually think they could all teach us a thing or two about how to architect these things. So I'm just sharing this with you because it's really funny. And I'll go to the next question after this. More organizations are saying that the real consultative mindset exists in the middle to lower parts of the organization. This is where I think students will be influencing higher education much more because they know their own challenges. And I think that with the type of leadership that you not only showcase, but you operationalize, that's exciting for a student. And I'm excited for what Marymount University is doing with your leadership. So as we get close to closing here, tell us a little bit about how you help produce tomorrow's workforce. Again, they have a higher expectation than ever before.
Yes. So Glenn, and I actually want to continue with this concept of the university of the future. As you know, people always see higher ed is the ivory tower, right? That's how it used to be, where the university is some remote place. You don't want it to be around industry, contaminated by the daily grind, right? They're in an ivory tower, focus on learning the classics, but kind of in its own little bubble. And a lot of people tend to describe higher ed as being in a bubble. but the university of tomorrow is one that is closely aligned with corporate and the industries that we're serving, because we want to be able to pivot quickly as to what is it that industry is looking for, so we are able to align our students with that particular skill set. So here at Marymount, we have been forming partnerships. We have a wonderful partnership with Netflix and to you. And this is a mutually beneficial partnership. Why? Because Netflix has an issue. They want to diversify their workforce. Marymount is the 23rd most diverse university in the nation. So I say, well, Netflix, I can help you. And if you can help us, they're helping us because they are producing these technical boot camps for our students that are being taught by Netflix engineers at no cost to our students. So helping add additional important skill set to our students. And in the meantime, these students are ready to walk into and be productive at Netflix jobs. So they help us by providing this know-how, and we help them by aligning students so that they can enter their workforce and help them diversify. We have a similar partnership with Sibley Hospital in Washington, D.C., which is with the effort of preparing our nursing students so that they can accelerate through passing their NCLEX and having the mentorship that they need and having really meaningful internships at Sibley while they're our students, so that they can seamlessly enter the workforce at Sibley Hospital. And you know that nowadays there's a huge shortage of nurses nationwide. So these partnerships are making for seamless introduction of students into these industries that they either need to compete for talent or they want our diverse talent. And by forging these partnerships, we're also making sure that we are providing our students with the education that they need to be successful to really land their job of their dream, or, you know, like we said before, continuing education into what they want to do next. It was different from our time, Glenn, because I remember I finished my bachelor's and then I went to all these interviews, and then that was the first time that I ever got exposed to where is it that I may be going to work, either Florida Power & Light or IBM. Now, by working closely with these industry partners, then it's a more seamless transition for our students into the great careers that they will have when they finish college.
You know, this is the way we need to be thinking. I mean, this is talk about co-creation at its best. Not only are you bringing access to an employer that's important there in the community, but in reverse, they're helping create opportunities to help seamlessly bring in your students to come hopefully and potentially work for them. And at the end of the day, we're all learning about what matters to this next generation of the workforce, while you're also learning about what the employer and how the employer is operating, and maybe help them evolve at the same time. It's this type of co-creation that I think is so important, and I'm thrilled to know that you're doing it, and I highly recommend, if I may, I think people need to hear more from you, President Becerra. I mean, you certainly have a vision for what is right in higher education, and I'm certainly honored that you took the time to spend 20 minutes to discuss your vision and the accomplishments at Marymount University. I greatly appreciate your time and support.
Thank you, Glenn. It really has been my pleasure to be here. I think that there's a lot of exciting things happening in higher ed these days. We want to continue to encourage our youth to take advantage of this great opportunity. As you know, I'm also an immigrant. I'm a Cuban immigrant that came to this country as a baby because of the Cuban Revolution. And I have dedicated myself to education, because the one thing that I learned through our immigrant experience is that no matter what happens, no one can ever take away your education. These were my grandmother's words, and I live them every day. And I know education has enabled me to, transform the opportunities, not only for me, but for my family. So I am committed to helping our students also reach that dream. And we have to work together to make sure that everybody knows that one of the things that makes this country so great, our great United States, is that everybody that wants to can have access to higher education. That's not true everywhere in the world, Glenn. So we need to make sure that we do our part to tell our students, you can do this, you can be successful. And I promise you that university leaders are here waiting for them, and we'll ensure to get them to cross the stage one day and receive that degree that makes their family so proud.
Thank you so much. You're so inspiring. Thank you so much. And as we end every podcast, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't. Do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks for listening to Personalization Outbreak. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoyed the content, visit ageofpersonalization.com to check out our free streaming video series and learn how to get involved in the movement. I'm Glenn Yopes. I wish you a good day, and remember, without strategy, change is merely substitution, not evolution.